Okay, take two. Batteries. Battery issues. Man, nothing like the battery issues there in France. Where did you see the fire in France of the lithium batteries? And then it caught onto a tire warehouse full of tires. Boy, you got to pray for France because they are in serious chemical wasteland right now. That's the magic of those electric vehicle batteries, right? The lithium batteries. Boosh! It's kind of like fireworks. You know, when they're done working, they kind of boosh, give up the ghost like 4th of July. But listen, take two. I wanted to pick up right where I was at because this last little bit, it's not going to be a very long rant. Is because I got all that out. Now I just want to drop some data on you and for some resolutions. And, really, what's most important is the fact that we make an intervention, and Tina can do that. Tina can do it by executive order, Governor Tina. She can do that by a couple of simple things. One of them is something that I've been screaming at Senator Merkley for years, is to get some low-income housing vouchers for low-income families. If we can't take care of the children here in Multnomah County, in the city of Portland, and the state of Oregon, what the fuck are we doing? I mean, if Democrats aren't taking care of the children, it's like, then they failed. Everything else is just total BS. Let me hit this for a second here. Yeah, it looks like there was a little smooshies on the lens. So what I was talking about is I was talking about reference points from the national redirect, and which sends us to Oregon.gov, and then also sends us to City of Portland the links. So Oregon.gov, again, I'll put it in the show notes. I was talking about the safe harbor eviction that expired September 30th. So at that point, what we're seeing now is we're seeing vulture NGOs here locally that are swooping in the name of profits, in the name of rising fuel costs, in the name of rising administrative costs, right? Where we've got people $100,000 to evict low-income families out of low-income housing, right? It's very hard work. They make a lot of money and they need to be paid good because they got to have solid help that knows how to evict low-income families. And so we're seeing these people come in and swoop in. Now that the safe harbor's been lifted, it's like immediately there's threatening letters that have been sent. They don't say, hey, your ass is going to get kicked to the curb because you don't have safe harbor. They actually kind of fluff it up and say, hey, all that money that you can't pay from last year, we're going to evict you. Here's a termination notice because you can't pay it, but you need to pay it now. Right? So you're struggling with the rent increase from 2023 this month. So on top of you struggling with your original rent increase, we're going to tack on hundreds of dollars every month that you have to pay from the back rent because we bungled your applications and paperwork from the American Rescue Plan. That's what happened at Reach. Where's our American Rescue applications? Let me point out the legal protections of why that's so important, that everybody in this building and other buildings in Portland, we're protected because we filed the American Rescue Plan. If you didn't file that, well, you need to talk to an attorney. If you've been given a termination notice, nobody here in this management team has made any effort to tell the tenants that they have a right to an attorney now because they're in jeopardy of being evicted. They've been given a termination notice. They've been given an eviction notice. At that point, through the City of Portland reference, they'll refer you through the Community Alliance of Tenants, which is an awesome organization, CAT. If you're not familiar with them, get familiar with them. Join them for $10. Once you give them $10, then come in and say, hey, by the way, this is happening in my building, and I think it's illegal, unethical, and immoral, at least, that what this management team is doing to the community, my apartment complex community, low-income folks. So that's CAT, and I do have a reference for them that you can also find them, a Community Alliance of Tenants. They are listed over and over. I'm finding their name in these serious links, which is stunning and impressive. I'm impressed because CAT has got representation. They have Multnomah County directing to them, and you have the City of Portland directing to them, which is coming from a national register. I'm like, wow, awesome. because they are an awesome operation. They're hiring, by the way. I noticed on their website they're looking for an organizer down in Jackson County. If you're in Jackson County, awesome opportunity, and they pay pretty good. And then they're looking for some sort of membership coordinator with a database here in Multnomah County. So if you've got skills, they're hiring. Back to this one here is Oregon.gov. To be protected, tenants must give proof. Okay, so that's here in these buildings where you've got these like Reach and Home Forward and Human Solutions. I think Human Solutions is running the Nick Fish out of Discovery Park. When we were living at Park Rose, we were at Discovery Park every day, and we saw them from the ground up building that apartment complex. We never saw it completed. Now it's completed and they're renting. The late Commissioner Nick Fish, who was instrumental, he's passed. Condolences to his young daughter and the family. But they named that building after him because he was so instrumental in the groundwork of sealing these deals with the construction and contractors, partnering with these NGOs. He would not be happy to hear the way Reach has been operating and managing their buildings. Human Solutions is a different story. I'd be very curious if Human Solutions was issuing termination notices and trying to evict low-income people out of the Nick Fish building. If you know, let me know. After June 30th, only tenants who have submitted their safe harbor documentation will be protected while their applications are processed. Grapefruit seltzer, 0 sugar. Landlords are required to give 10 days of notice of termination of tenancy for non-payment until September 30th, 2022. If you receive a 10-day notice for non-payment, if you haven't already, apply for emergency rent assistance and provide documentation to your landlord. This is all outdated here from Oregon.gov because none of that's available. It's been closed. You had to have had your application in, but you are protected if you have your application in. If you haven't already, apply. Call the Community Alliance of Tenants, 503-288-0130, or Springfield Eugene Tenant Association hotlines, which they give a number there. If you have questions, who is eligible? Okay, and it talks about who's eligible. And then it goes into the resources. So one of the things that it points out, and it talks about that you cannot, once a tenant is given their landlord documentation of their application, the landlord may not move forward with a termination notice. All of that is a violation here in this building. Probably if they're doing it in the other buildings that Reach manages, they're all in violation of this law and protection. You may not move forward with the termination notice or an eviction action until the application has been closed, denied, or paid. Where's the applications? I've asked several times here for weeks. Where's the applications? Where'd they go? They weren't paid because you're trying to evict everybody for not paying them. If they're closed, where's the application that says it's closed? Why was it closed? Why was it denied? It wasn't denied because you can't find it. That's on management's responsibility. That's management's liability. Management needs to be fired and evicted, not the tenants who are victims of the bad management. This is Oregon.gov law. If your application is closed, denied, or paid in an amount that is less than is owed, your landlord can move forward with an eviction process. After June 30th, your tenants who have been submitted their safe harbor documentation will be protected while their applications are processed. So we've been waiting June, July, August, September, and then they said, oh, September, all the applications are closed. October, November, we're waiting. Management doesn't know what they're doing. There was a change of management. Someone resigned. The lead community manager resigned or quit or was pressured to quit from incompetence. I don't know yet, but she's gone. So they do this, transition. I'll give them a little wiggle room on the transition in this building from our case, these 100 units, which I haven't actually been told how many people are facing this illegal operation. But then again, if people didn't get their paperwork in time, then they don't have that protection. Those of us that did have the American Rescue Plan paperwork were clearly protected here by the state government. This is on the state government's website. So then on Multnomah County, they actually go into the basics. It says your eviction process, your rights. You got to get a 72-hour notice. You've received a notice without a court date, and you can seek legal assistance immediately. So that's the only thing that would benefit the tenants. The only thing that Reach is clueless and doesn't know. They haven't issued this. They haven't told anybody. But if you have a termination notice, then an eviction notice, in effect, if that you've gotten that letter from last year's back rent, you can now get legal advice. Now the waiting list is going to be long, and it probably might take weeks. So get on it right away. Call them, leave a message. There's certain hours. I think it's 9 to 1 or something. A couple of days. They need money. It's low budget, but this basically, I didn't realize that there's a measure, I don't know what you call it. There's something to vote on. I think it's this spring here in Portland about funding for attorneys for everyone that's being evicted. Well, the framework's already there, which I didn't know. I've been here for 3 years. I haven't had to deal with any type of illegal evictions or constructed evictions. I've battled constructed evictions before. That's a whole other thing I'm not going to get into, but there is a part of a constructed eviction in this building because people have complained about the smoke from the pizza shop, and they're just being evicted now instead of fixing the problem. That's called a constructed eviction. But that's a whole other thing. We're not talking about that for most of the people. The Eviction Defense Project has attorneys who may be able to give advice or represent you in court for free, or I don't know exactly. It says for free, but there may be some stipulations to that. Reach the Eviction Defense Project, call 888-585-9638, or visit OregonLawCenter.org/eviction-defense-project. Okay? That'll be in the show notes. So that's something there. And then again, more information about your rights as a tenant. Again, another reference to Community Alliance of Tenants, CAT. The Community Alliance of Tenants is a tenants' right organization focused on education. Contact the Community Alliance of Tenants. Call 503-288-0130 or visit www.oregoncat.org/renters-rights-hotline. There's a link there as well. So, and again, the trick there to get the ears and things move quickly is to send them $10. I mean, that's the minimum. You could send them more, and I would encourage everyone to send them money. I mean that. I rarely pitch for people. This is one that needs the money to be pitched. They need it and can use it. They're doing amazing work. The load of demand for those services are going to tenfold this next coming year. Now, this is where I start to get doom and gloomy. I'm sorry to sound like a bummer, but I'm a realist. It's not the glass is half full, the optimist, the glass is half empty, the pessimist. I'm the realist. I see the water in the glass polluted, it's contaminated, it's got nanoparticles. Don't drink it. So, oh, dude, that's a double negative. You're a double pessimist. And it's like, okay, you call me whatever you want. I call it a realist. I'm realistically looking at your glass of water. Don't drink it. But, so I digress. So the doom and gloom is that this is only going to get worse. And that's where Tina, it politically serves her very well to come out cracking like she has. But it's very significant if she can actually back up those executive actions with organization and actual movement. When I say that we've got 10, 12,000, 15,000, 10, 12, 15,000 low-income families that are in jeopardy here in the Multnomah County area. I believe that's the Multnomah County data. And although I'd have to look at it and I don't have it right in front of me, I believe that's what we're looking at. There's going to be a few thousand more throughout the state, down in Lane County, Eugene, and in these other little pockets. But the majority of folks experiencing houselessness and all the other issues is they come to Portland because that's where the Portland resources are. Is that's where the largest amount of housing in this urban development in Oregon. And we've only got 4 million people in Oregon. So, and I think it's like 2 million in the Tri-County Portland area. Something like this. I could be off on that, but I believe that's what it is. It's the largest, I know for sure, the largest portion of urban development is right here in Portland. So that's where the highest number, Multnomah County, that's where the highest number of evictions are going to happen. And for a couple of years, we've had safe harbor, we've had these protections. Now all that's gone. Now all that's done. And there was a whole bunch of conservatives and Republicans that were saying, hey, you can't block people paying rent. That's illegal. And then they fought it and sued it. And I think there was a couple of courts here and there. And I think it panned out. Correct me if I'm wrong, but did it make it to the Supreme Court? It went up in a high court that it was unconstitutional. It was federal government overreach to say people don't have to pay rent during a pandemic. It is what it is. Now, what I would say in my argument to those conservatives and Republicans that are cheering on people going homeless is, what do you think happens when we have a couple more million people without homes, probably going to be heavily armed with black market guns, now needing to resort to a life of street crime, right, to survive because they're houseless? So think deeply on that one, conservatives. Think deeply when you talk about how it's all welfare and welfare is bad. Think very deeply on the expense of $30,000 to $40,000 every year to house one prisoner in one fucking cell. Think deeply, because what we're creating is a powder keg of explosive survivalist violence. And it's going to happen in the cities, and just telling people to move out of the city does not stop or slow that down or be proactive to prevent it. It's the one thing that I'm disgusted with Republicans and conservatives with that argument. It sucks donkey balls, because it costs us far more with casualties, death, and children caught in the crossfire of bullets and all this. It costs far more to house all these people at $30,000 or $40,000 a year, after all the salaries and the expense and feeding them biscuits and unedible food in prison. And not to mention that it doesn't correct. It's not proactive. It doesn't prevent the crimes. To prevent crimes, we need to make sure that people can get affordable housing. And if they've got zero income and they need detox, then they're going to have housing where they're not paying any rent. Just like jail. Prisoners don't pay rent in prison, do they? So it makes a heck of a lot more sense to spend a few $100s a month to give someone housing than it does to spend $3,000 to $4,000 a month for the corrections officer, prison guards, blah, blah, blah. Most importantly, that's just the financial angle. That's like, I'm addressing the conservative and Republican arguments. Most importantly, it's a humanitarian thing to do. I don't look at taking care of the poor as some sort of welfare system and it's some big fucked up thing. We've got trillions and trillions of dollars here in the United States of America. Look at where we spend this money. Look at how much money we're sending to little Z, little coked up Z, the little Judeus who's working with Azov Nazi battalions in Ukraine. Look at all the $1 billion we send that son of a bitch. And then you Republican conservatives, neo-hawk, warmongers want to bitch and complain and whine like little bitches about housing and about welfare, about a little extra food benefit during inflation. You sure in the fuck didn't give a fuck about extending that all those services end in March for Americans. So as American families are now, you're going to starve them. What's going to happen when they get hungry? Nothing more dangerous than a hungry man. What happens when a guy gets hungry? Huh? pew, pew, pew. So, and I'm reducing it. I am being a reductionist, and yes, I hear the arguments that people have the responsibility of their own actions, their own behaviors, but we also need to take in consideration the humanitarian dynamics, that people suffer disabling dynamics, sometimes psychologically, sometimes physically, sometimes financially, and we need to be there as Americans to help Americans. Now, the whole another argument about a couple million people that have ran the border and nearly drowned in a river to get here, that's a whole nother argument in my book. I don't even want to get into the whole dynamics of it because it's complicated. It's a political football that needs to end now with the border, and I support the fancy border fencing, if you will. Just as a start, we need agents down there to be supported to secure. And we need another process. My idea is actually to build a high-speed light rail, a train. So we can do that right out of Texas. We can send people back where they need to go. We can also get families on there that need to come up here who have waited their 2 years or whatever it is in the process, and their number and time is up to come to America. And we'll welcome them, open arms. We don't need to sound like xenophobic dipshits. Securing the border is not xenophobic. Let's not let them make it xenophobic with your actions and words. So it's securing the border is protecting our teens from fentanyl. Securing the border is protecting the people themselves, the migrants themselves who are being exploited by people, coyotes, who are making billions of dollars off of trafficking now. Let me digress on all of it, and let me wrap that up. So you've got the resources there. I've clearly outlaid the protections by law. If you have an application through American Rescue Plan, the management is responsible. They have to verify your income. So if you're in an apartment complex, and you're especially one that's dealing with some other NGO through the government, is that they have to honor the application process by structure, by policy, by law, in a ethical, moral way. But it's also legally binding. Is when that application was presented last summer in a timely manner and it's within there, it needs to be paid. If it's not paid, then what happened? And where's the applications? And there's legal protections. That will come out in any eviction court with anyone that can get legal representation and find an attorney who knows what the fuck they're doing. I'm not an attorney, but I know what the fuck is going on. My brain thinks like an attorney. I can research like an attorney, and I help people like an attorney. I've been given power of attorney, POA, several times because people need help and they can't get an attorney. It's the same dynamic right now with public defenders. I actually think that we could have people that don't have a legal degree that could actually volunteer to be a power of attorney. And we could have defense from the community of people that aren't legal. They're acting as a power of attorney, POA. It's just one idea I'm pitching out there to resolve this issue where we just catch and release. The district attorney says, well, we don't have the public defenders. Well, like we deputize, we can deputize people like that with a swearing in. Let's do the same thing with legal teams. Okay? Let's just consider the idea we could have community volunteers. I would actually do it. It'd be great if you could pay me, but I would actually do it for free, especially if it was a pilot program where you've got people that just need representation. They just need somebody in court to argue for them. And hopefully they know what the fuck they're talking about. You can have a script so people know what they're talking about. Stay on the script. Just one idea. It's just like that, the high-speed light rail idea. You know, by the way, that Texas going down south's high-speed light rail, you could have these little communities and cities that develop at certain stops along the way with resources. So you got your water and your food, your medical, the humanitarian reach out, people that are being abused or hurt or harmed or in danger. Along the way, they can actually get help there. And you would have, I don't know how many it would probably cost a hell of a lot of money. But think about all the things we spend money on, and what's more important with this migrant crisis than at least presenting an idea like a high-speed train going south from Texas back down, and it could make return trips. So I digress. I got lots of ideas. You want ideas? I got lots of ideas. It's up to you and the community, and then the people that have the power to actually do something with the good ideas. So that's some more legal stuff. And then free eviction defense if you're low income tenant. This came from the city of Portland. Don't wait. Call 888-585-9638 or email evictiondefense@OregonLawCenter.org. And the sponsors there, Portland Community College. Wow, that's cool. Clear Clinic. I don't know what Clear, CLEAR. I don't know what that is, but it's through Portland Community College. Portland Housing Bureau. Okay. The rental services office, Oregon Law Center. Anybody that's had to battle an eviction has to go through, and you don't have money, got to go through the Oregon Law Center. American Rescue Plan. See, the American Rescue Plan allocated funding through Portland, and they created this legal defense fund because they knew that people were on the brink of being evicted, and that's why the American Rescue Plan funding and application was set up. It was to be proactive. So now that all of that's expired, Safe Harbor is expired, the funding is not renewed, the $2 trillion package from Congress did not have the money in it that needs to be right where we need it, the most important, to prevent people from going houseless, low-income families, and we need to have low-income vouchers. You can start first with those 10 to 12, 15,000, whatever the exact number is, of low-income families that have suffered hardship from the corona and COVID, SARS-2 during the pandemic, and focus on the children right here locally, and that should be the focus nationally, but directly to Governor Tina plus one, is that we need to target the children, at least. Start there. Just start there. And do a housing voucher where, whatever it is, whatever the number is, $800, $1,000, come in with a housing voucher, and you can even have it temporary. You can say, hey, this is for 2 years. Or you could do it 1 year, but I think it should be longer than 1 year. Whatever it is, whatever the funding allows, you say this is your housing voucher for this certain amount of time. It's not forever. It's got a time sunset clause, right? Sunset clause. So anyway, and then United Way of Columbia Willamette was actually they're in on there, one of the sponsors on this free eviction defense. So that right there needs to be, that's the flyer that needs to be on the elevators in the apartment buildings. That's the flyer that needs to be put on people's doors that are, instead of saying you're going to be terminated and here, sign this contract that says you've got to owe another $500 a month on top of your rent increase $1,000. I mean, it's like, what kind of asinine, ass-backwards thinking is that? People can't pay the rent increase that's happened in January 2023, and they're struggling to do that, but you're going to try to tell them that they got to sign a contract that puts hundreds of dollars more from last year's rent? The fuck is wrong with you people? That's not management. That's like a work camp in Auschwitz or something. So I apologize for the reference, but holy fuck. Then throw in blowing smoke and chemicals into the units. Woo-wee! Hey-y'all! Hey-y'all! So anyway, let me wrap it up there. That's the part 2. Got the references there. The rant is over. We have a massive crisis, and it's going to hit the most vulnerable, the